Welcome to Next Generation, where we uncover the stories behind the world's most iconic brands. In 1982, an Austrian marketing genius saw a strange energy drink in a tiny shop in Thailand. That single moment would change the way billions of people drink, party, and work. Imagine creating a drink that wasn't just a product, but an entire lifestyle. This is the story of how Red Bull gave the world wings and built a global empire without even owning a single factory. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear is more than a business strategy. It's a masterclass in building culture. 1. The man with the vision. The story begins in Styria, Austria, where Dietrich Mateschitz, born in 1944, lived an ordinary life before becoming one of the greatest marketing minds in history. Dietrich was a traveling toothpaste salesman in the 1970s and early 80s. Working for Blendax, a German consumer goods company, he was smart, charming, and a natural storyteller, but nobody, not even Dietrich himself, knew that he was about to redefine the beverage industry at age 38. While most people were busy planning their retirement, Dietrich was on a business trip to Thailand. Jet-lagged and exhausted after a long flight, he walked into a small convenience store. A simple blue and gold can caught his eye. The drink was called Krating Dang, which translates to Red Gower, a strong wild ox. Curious, he bought the drink, cracked it open, and drank it in one go. Within minutes, he felt refreshed, alert, and alive. This was no ordinary soda. It was an energy drink designed for Thai truck drivers and laborers who needed to stay awake through long nights. That was Dietrich's aha moment. He thought to himself, if this can give wings to tired people in Thailand, what could it do in Europe? 2. An unlikely partnership. Red Bull's origin isn't a solo hero story, it's a partnership between East and West. The drink was originally created by Chalio Uvadia, a Thai businessman from a poor family. He had developed Krating Dang in the 1970s to help local workers fight fatigue. Chalio wasn't a flashy entrepreneur. He was quiet, humble, and deeply connected to Thai culture, but he had built something powerful, a loyal base of millions of customers. When Dietrich met Chalio, he didn't just propose to sell the drink in Europe, he proposed something far more ambitious. Modify the formula to suit Western taste buds, rebrand it with a new name, and build a global marketing machine. They struck a deal. Each would hold 49% of the new company. The remaining 2% would go to Chalio's son. Dietrich would handle marketing and global expansion. Chalio would handle production in Thailand. In 1984, Red Bull GmbH was officially born. 3. A product nobody wanted. The funny thing about revolutionary ideas is, at first, everyone laughs at them. When Dietrich tried to register Red Bull in Austria, regulators pushed back. Too much caffeine, they said. Unhealthy. No one will buy this strange drink. Supermarkets also refused to stock it. Traditional advertising agencies said, it's just a soft drink, nothing special. But Dietrich didn't panic. He had a different strategy in mind. Instead of begging supermarkets for shelf space, he decided to create hype from the ground up. He built the brand first, and the distribution second. For guerrilla marketing, genius Red Bull didn't have a billion-dollar marketing budget, but it had something better. Creativity. Dietrich and his team started using guerrilla marketing tactics. They handed out free cans to university students, clubgoers, and nightlife hotspots. They parked small Red Bull minis with a giant can on top in busy streets to grab attention. They targeted trendsetters, not the mass market. Instead of convincing everyone, they focused on convincing the right few, and letting word of mouth do the rest. They launched the product officially in Austria in 1987. Within months, Red Bull became a cult symbol among students, DJs, and extreme sports fans. 5. Red Bull gives you wings. In 1992, Dietrich made one of the boldest marketing decisions in beverage history. He created a global slogan that was simple, memorable, and universal. Red Bull gives you wings. It wasn't just a line, it was a promise. A drink that doesn't just give energy, it gives you possibility, freedom, power, fun. They backed it up with quirky, animated ads, and weird humor that made the brand feel rebellious and cool. This was no boring soda, this was a lifestyle. And the world noticed. 6. Expansion and lifestyle branding. Like Coca-Cola, Red Bull didn't try to be everywhere at once. Dietrich carefully chose niche markets with strong youth culture. Germany, 1994 UK, 1995 USA, 1997. By 2000, Red Bull was sold in more than 50 countries. But here's the real secret. Red Bull wasn't just selling drinks. It was selling a lifestyle of energy, rebellion, and adventure. They sponsored snowboarding, skateboarding, BMX, Formula One, and skydiving. When people saw Red Bull, they didn't think soft drink. They thought extreme sports, fun, parties, and pushing limits. 7. A brand built on culture, not ads. Instead of copying Pepsi or Coke, Red Bull built its own media empire. Red Bull Media House produced documentaries, sports coverage, and music festivals. Red Bull created its own sports teams, like Red Bull Racing F1. They organized insane stunts like Felix Baumgartner's jump from the edge of space in 2012, which we'll explore in part 4. This was marketing on another level. Red Bull didn't chase culture. It became culture. 8. Setbacks and critics. Of course, the journey wasn't without bumps. In the early 2000s, health organizations criticized the drink's high caffeine and sugar content. Several countries temporarily banned it. Media headlines screamed about dangerous energy drinks. But Red Bull used controversy as fuel. Every headline made the brand sound even more powerful and rebellious. Dietrich didn't apologize, he reinforced the brand's bold image. When regulators pushed, Red Bull pushed back. With more stunts, more visibility, and more dominance. 9. The psychology behind Red Bull's success. Marketing experts call Red Bull one of the greatest case studies in modern branding. Why? Because Dietrich understood something others didn't. Sell a feeling, not just a drink. Start with trendsetters, not the masses. Turn controversy into free advertising. Create culture, don't just follow it. Red Bull was never about just sugar and caffeine. It was about giving wings to dreams, adrenaline, and ambition. 10. The beginning of an empire. By the late 1990s, Red Bull had already become a global cult brand with massive profits. It dominated the energy drink market with more than 70% share in Europe and North America. While Pepsi and Coca-Cola were still relying on TV ads, Red Bull was throwing music festivals, sponsoring sports legends, and becoming a lifestyle statement. And this was just the beginning of its empire. By the early 2000s, Red Bull had already done something extraordinary. It dominated the energy drink market without producing a single can itself. Unlike Coca-Cola or Pepsi, Red Bull didn't invest billions in manufacturing plants. Instead, the company outsourced production to partners in Austria, then focused 100% on marketing, branding, and culture. This made Red Bull light, fast, and extremely flexible. While other brands worried about logistics, Red Bull built empires around emotion. Their formula was simple: a sleek silver-blue can, a bold slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings," and a marketing strategy that didn't follow the rules. It rewrote them to owning moments, not billboards. In 2001, Red Bull's marketing team asked a dangerous question: why pay to be part of someone else's show when we can own the show itself? While other brands fought for ad space at sporting events, Red Bull decided to create its own events. Red Bull Flugtag, where people fly homemade flying machines off a pier. Red Bull Cliff Diving, Red Bull Air Race, Red Bull X Fighters. These weren't just promotions, they were spectacles. Millions around the world tuned in not to watch ads, but to watch the brand itself as entertainment. Dietrich Mateschitz understood what many marketers still don't. If people love your content, they'll love your product without even realizing it. 3. Extreme sports revolution. Red Bull found its identity in adrenaline. The company started sponsoring extreme sports long before the mainstream noticed their potential. Skateboarding, BMX, snowboarding, wingsuit flying, BASC. jumping when competitors were putting logos on billboards. Red Bull put logos on the chests of heroes, real people doing impossible things. Red Bull wasn't just a drink, it became a badge of courage, a symbol of the fearless. This approach turned thousands of athletes into brand ambassadors, not because they were paid celebrities, but because they believed in the lifestyle. For Red Bull Media House, a game changer in 2007, Red Bull made one of the most powerful strategic moves in its history. It launched Red Bull Media House. This wasn't just a content department. It was a fully operational global media company producing documentaries, live sports broadcasts, music festivals, streaming content, and viral campaigns that would travel across the internet like wildfire. Red Bull Media House made the brand independent from traditional advertising. They owned the stories, owned the platforms, and owned the narrative. This was the moment Red Bull stopped being a beverage company and became a media empire. 5. Enter Formula One, racing to the top. Perhaps the boldest move came in 2004, when Red Bull bought the struggling Jaguar Racing F1 team from Ford. Critics laughed. An energy drink company in Formula One. Impossible. But Dietrich didn't listen. He saw Formula One as the perfect stage to project Red Bull's high-performance, fearless image. In 2005, Red Bull Racing officially joined the grid. Within a few years, they did what billion-dollar car companies couldn't. They dominated. 4 World Constructors' Championships, 4 Drivers' Championships thanks to Sebastian Vettel. Iconic marketing moments seen by hundreds of millions. Red Bull Racing became the most powerful marketing engine in modern sports history. Every race wasn't just a competition, it was a global commercial for the drink. 6. Targeting youth culture with precision. While Red Bull expanded into elite sports, it never forgot its core audience, young people. Throughout the 2000s, they sponsored college events and DJ nights, partnered with music festivals like Tomorrowland, ran campaigns with gaming and years before esports exploded. Everywhere the youth went, Red Bull was already there, not with pushy ads, but with experiences. The brand mastered the art of relevance. 7. Viral. Before viral was a thing, long before TikTok or Instagram, Red Bull understood the internet. They didn't wait for news coverage, they created content that became the news. When an athlete did a backflip over the Arc de Triomphe, Red Bull filmed it. When skydivers jumped off skyscrapers, Red Bull sponsored it. When the world's best snowboarders competed, Red Bull streamed it. Every stunt became a marketing explosion. Every video became free advertising watched by millions. This is why, even with less shelf space than Coke or Pepsi, Red Bull built a brand 100 times louder. 8. Price and positioning strategy. Red Bull was never cheap. From the beginning, the company priced itself higher than soda, making it feel premium. While Coke or Pepsi sold for $1, Red Bull charged $3 for a tiny 250 milliliters can. Why would people pay more? Because they weren't buying a drink. They were buying a symbol of energy, a status signal, and a lifestyle. This clever pricing positioned Red Bull as something special, a fuel for doers, dreamers, and risk-takers. 9. Global expansion strategy. During the 2000s, Red Bull launched in country after country with surgical precision. The steps were almost always the same. Start with students, hand out free cans at universities, target nightlife bars, clubs, festivals, sponsor extreme sports, create buzz, create local events that go viral, gradually expand into retail. By 2010, Red Bull was available in more than 160 countries, with over 4 billion cans sold annually. Every market felt like Red Bull was made just for them. 10. Competitors rise, but Red Bull stands tall with Red Bull's explosive growth. Competitors rushed in. Monster Energy, Rockstar Energy, 5 Hour Energy. Big soda companies launched their own energy drinks, but they struggled to match Red Bull's cultural grip. Because Red Bull didn't just have distribution, it had community, it had trust, rebellion, identity. Even when competitors offered bigger cans or lower prices, Red Bull stayed premium and kept growing. 11. Brand consistency. A secret weapon through all this chaos. One thing never changed. The silver and blue can, the Charging Bulls logo, the Red Bull gives you wings slogan, the rebellious, playful, energetic tone. This consistency built memory. When people saw a Red Bull can, they immediately felt something. The brand became a global language, understood in every country, without translation. 12. The genius of controlled distribution. Here's a strategic twist most people don't know. Red Bull intentionally limited its distribution in early markets. Instead of flooding shelves, it created artificial scarcity. People saw the can in the hands of cool kids, athletes, and celebrities, but not in every supermarket fridge. Scarcity made it feel special, desirable, exclusive, and when Red Bull finally expanded to mass distribution, demand was already sky-high. 13. Culture greater than product. Dietrich Mateschitz believed something radical. Great marketing doesn't sell a product, it sells a story people want to be part of. Red Bull was the fuel of the fearless. The logo became a symbol worn proudly by skydivers jumping out of planes, students pulling all-nighters, athletes pushing their limits, and dreamers chasing the impossible. 14. A decade of dominance. By the end of the 2000s, Red Bull controlled over 60% of the global energy drink market. It was available in more than 160 countries. It had 4 billion cans sold per year, and it had the most recognizable slogan in the beverage world. But what made Red Bull special wasn't just the numbers, it was the loyalty, the emotions, the movement it had created. It wasn't a soda, it was a cultural force. 15. Preparing for something bigger. As the 2000s came to a close, Dietrich and his team began working on what would become one of the most spectacular marketing stunts in human history. They weren't just going to sponsor another extreme sports event. They were going to send a man to the edge of space. But that story, the story of Felix Baumgartner's legendary jump, belongs to part 4. For now, Red Bull had already cemented itself as the king of energy drinks and a marketing empire unlike any the world had seen before. The birth of a global marketing revolution. Visual cue. Early Red Bull marketing posters, sports events, aerial stunts, dynamic high-energy imagery. In the mid-1990s, as Red Bull started gaining a steady foothold in Austria and nearby European countries, the company faced its first big strategic decision. Should it grow slowly and safely, or explode into the world with a bold, never-seen-before strategy? Dietrich Mateschitz chose the second option. Instead of relying on traditional advertising like TV spots, newspaper ads, or supermarket discounts, Red Bull crafted a marketing playbook that rewrote the rules of modern branding. The company didn't just sell an energy drink, it sold an identity, a lifestyle, a feeling. 1. The genius of guerrilla marketing. In 1994, Red Bull launched one of the most unconventional marketing strategies ever attempted by a beverage company. Instead of expensive celebrity endorsements, Red Bull sent out student brand ambassadors to universities, clubs, and gyms. These students were called Red Bull Wings teams. Their mission was simple: drive around in small silver minis with giant Red Bull cans on top, hand out free samples to tired students, partygoers, and athletes, target moments when people felt low on energy, exams on sports events. But here's where the strategy became genius. Red Bull didn't just give away drinks. It made the product feel exclusive and cool. They didn't flood the market, they chose locations carefully, places where influencers, trendsetters, and young audiences gathered. Soon, people weren't just drinking Red Bull, they were talking about it. 2. Red Bull becomes a lifestyle symbol. By 1995, something unexpected happened. In cities like Vienna and Munich, Red Bull wasn't just a drink anymore. It had become a badge of identity. College students drank Red Bull to stay sharp. Nightclub DJs kept cans behind their decks. Skiers and snowboarders held it up in after-party photos. It became a statement. I'm young, ambitious, and I live fast. This was no accident. Red Bull engineered this image carefully. The company never lowered prices or offered supermarket discounts. Why? Because scarcity creates value. When something isn't everywhere, people want it more. 3. The iconic slogan, Red Bull gives you wings. In 1997, Red Bull launched what would become one of the most recognizable slogans in advertising history. Red Bull gives you wings. The slogan was playful yet powerful. It didn't talk about caffeine or ingredients. It spoke about freedom, energy, and limitless potential. The animated TV commercials, with simple hand-drawn characters and absurd humor, became instant hits. Unlike Coca-Cola or Pepsi ads filled with big celebrities, Red Bull's cartoons stood out. They were cheap to make, easy to remember, and deeply shareable. Every time someone repeated the slogan, they weren't just talking about a drink, they were spreading a movement. 4. Sponsoring the extreme. While most beverage companies poured millions into sports like soccer or basketball, Red Bull went a different way. It started sponsoring niche high-energy sports that mainstream brands ignored. Skydiving, BMX, skateboarding, snowboarding, cliff diving. These were underground communities in the 90s. But Red Bull saw something big. They matched the brand's personality perfectly. Red Bull didn't just put a logo on jerseys, it owned the event. Red Bull flug tag people flying homemade machines. Red Bull X-Fighters freestyle motocross. Red Bull crashed ice, downhill skating at insane speeds. Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series. These weren't marketing campaigns, they were spectacles. Crowds grew, cameras followed, media buzz exploded. Suddenly, Red Bull was everywhere, without ever buying a Super Bowl ad. 5. The Red Bull culture machine. By the late 1990s, Red Bull's marketing strategy became a blueprint for modern brand culture. The company didn't chase customers, it attracted believers. No traditional celebrity ambassadors, no discounts or coupons, no product focused on ingredients. Instead, Red Bull built a myth. Drink this, and you can do the impossible. And it worked. By 1999, Red Bull had expanded to over 50 countries. It sold over 1 billion cans annually, and it had no serious competitors in the energy drink space. 6. The global expansion playbook. When entering new countries, Red Bull didn't just roll out trucks and hope for the best. They followed a meticulous playbook. Target students and nightlife. First, use wings. Teams to hand out samples at exclusive spots. Create local extreme sports events. Sponsor up-and-coming athletes. Launch a viral campaign with the Gives You Wings slogan. This strategy made young people the first adopters, and once they embraced the brand, the rest of society followed. 7. Dietrich's rule controlled the narrative. One of Dietrich's most powerful beliefs was, "We don't sell energy drinks. We sell a world where anything is possible." This belief guided every marketing decision. When big retailers demanded discounts, Red Bull refused. When traditional agencies pushed for TV celebrity campaigns, Red Bull ignored them. When competitors tried to copy the formula, they couldn't replicate the culture. Red Bull wasn't playing in the beverage industry, it was playing in the attention industry. 8. The birth of brand on media. In 2000, Red Bull took another revolutionary step. Instead of relying on newspapers or TV to cover their events, they built their own media house, Red Bull Media House. This wasn't just a PR team, it was a full-scale content empire. Professional filmmakers followed Red Bull athletes. Drone shots captured extreme sports in breathtaking locations. High-energy music and cinematic editing created short viral films. The result? Red Bull didn't have to pay for ads anymore. People voluntarily shared their content. They became a media company that sold drinks, not the other way around. 9. The energy drink wars begin. By the early 2000s, Red Bull's explosive growth caught the attention of competitors. Monster, Rockstar, and dozens of local energy drink brands appeared almost overnight. But here's the catch. Most focused only on the drink taste, price, caffeine. Red Bull had spent a decade building something money couldn't copy: a global movement. Monster paid for musicians. Rockstar put logos on cars. Red Bull owned the story. And in branding, story beats strategy every single time. 10. The foundation of a billion-dollar empire. By 2003, Red Bull had crossed over $1 billion in annual revenue. It was now one of the fastest-growing beverage companies in the world. But Dietrich Mateschitz wasn't satisfied. He wasn't thinking like a CEO. He was thinking like a storyteller. He knew the drink itself was simple: caffeine, sugar, taurine, and carbonation. But the brand power was unmatched. And that brand power was about to launch Red Bull into an entirely new dimension, one that no other energy drink company dared to enter. Visual cue: Red Bull Global Expansion Map, athletes midair, fans cheering at events. From energy drink to sports empire, visual cue: Red Bull Racing, F1 car roaring on the track. Aerial shots of branded sports events, stadium lights flickering in the early 2000s. Red Bull was no longer just a beverage brand, it was a global cultural phenomenon, a movement that had reshaped how people thought about energy drinks, sports, and identity. But founder Dietrich Mateschitz was still not satisfied. While other companies were trying to catch up with Red Bull's marketing, Mateschitz was quietly planning his next big move. And it wasn't another drink flavor or a new can design, that was a sports revolution. 1. Red Bull enters the world of Formula One. By 2004, Red Bull had already made its presence felt in extreme sports, skydiving, motocross, cliff diving, snowboarding. But Dietrich had his eyes set on the crown jewel of global motorsport, Formula One. At the time, Formula One was dominated by legacy giants like Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams. Brands didn't just walk in and win. It took decades of racing history to build a reputation. But Red Bull wasn't like other brands. In 2004, Red Bull purchased the Jaguar Racing F1 team from Ford Price, around $1.5 million, a symbolic amount for a team that was struggling financially. Many experts called it a marketing stunt. They said, an energy drink can't run a competitive F1 team. But Dietrich didn't just want to participate, he wanted to dominate, too. Building a winning culture. Red Bull Racing was officially born in 2005. Instead of relying on old-school strategies, they built the team with the same bold, creative mindset that made their marketing legendary. They hired Christian Horner, a young, ambitious team principal. They brought in Adrian Newey, one of the most brilliant car designers in F1 history. They created a fun, rebellious team culture, the complete opposite of the stiff, corporatef, one world. The team's paddock was lively. They threw parties, they laughed, they took risks. But behind the scenes, they were ruthless in their pursuit of performance. Slowly, Red Bull Racing began to rise through the ranks. Visual cue: Jaguar car transformation gives Red Bull Racing livery, team assembling in garage. 3. The arrival of a future legend, Sebastian Vettel. In 2009, Red Bull signed a young German driver named Sebastian Vettel. At just 21 years old, Vettel had already shown flashes of brilliance. The combination of Adrian Newey's car design genius, Christian Horner's leadership, Vettel's raw speed, turned Red Bull Racing into a serious championship contender. That year, Red Bull shocked the F1 world by finishing second in the Constructors' Championship, just behind the mighty Brawn GP. But the best was yet to come. For Red Bull's first World Championship in 2010, everything clicked. Vettel's RB6 car was fast, the team strategy was sharp, their energy and team spirit were unmatched. In the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi, Sebastian Vettel won and became the youngest world champion in F1 history at the time. For Red Bull, it wasn't just a trophy, it was a message to the world. We're not just an energy drink company, we're a global powerhouse. They also won the Constructors' Championship, making Red Bull Racing the best team in the world that year. And they didn't stop there. 5. 4 years of total dominance. From 2010 to 2013, Red Bull Racing became unstoppable. 4 World Drivers' Championships for Sebastian Vettel. For Constructors' Championships, dozens of pole positions and race victories there. Iconic RB7 and RB9 cars became symbols of F1 excellence. What made their dominance unique was their brand image. While Ferrari symbolized tradition and Mercedes symbolized precision, Red Bull symbolized speed, rebellion, and pure energy. Fans loved their underdog-turned-champion story. TV ratings soared whenever Red Bull cars were at the front dot, and every victory added more brand power to the can in people's hands. 6. Red Bull's global sports empire. While F1 brought global prestige, Red Bull wasn't content with a single sport. They expanded aggressively into football, soccer, ice hockey, air racing, MotoGP, extreme adventure sports. They purchased or founded multiple football clubs, including Red Bull Salzburg, RB Leipzig, New York Red Bulls. These teams didn't just carry the Red Bull logo, they were owned, branded, and managed with the same philosophy. Push limits, break rules, be bold. The company invested heavily in youth academies, sports science, and performance analytics. Their football clubs became known for their high-intensity playing style, mirroring the brand's high-energy identity. 7. Turning athletes into heroes. While most brands sponsored athletes, Red Bull built them into icons. They signed young, hungry talent across multiple sports: snowboarders, pilots, surfers, bikers, skateboarders. But here's the twist. Red Bull didn't just slap logos on jerseys, they told stories. They produced cinematic short films, mini-documentaries, and live broadcasts through Red Bull Media House. Fans didn't just see the athlete, they felt the adrenaline of their journey. This made Red Bull athletes into heroes, not just endorsers. By 2015, Red Bull had over 750 sponsored athletes worldwide. 8. The Red Bull Stratos project, perhaps the most iconic moment in Red Bull's marketing history, came on October 14, 2012. Austrian skydiver Felix Baumgartner stood in a capsule 39 kilometers above Earth. Red Bull had spent years planning the mission, called Red Bull Stratos. The goal: break the world record for the highest skydive, be the first human to break the sound barrier in freefall. Millions around the world watched the livestream. Felix stepped off the capsule. He fell faster than the speed of sound, and as the world held its breath, the Red Bull logo floated on the screen. This was not just a stunt, it was marketing history. 8 million concurrent YouTube viewers, a record at the time. Billions of media impressions, zero traditional ads. Red Bull didn't buy airtime, they became the event. 9. Red Bull Racing's second golden era. After their Vettel era, Red Bull Racing faced tough years as Mercedes dominated the hybrid era. But they didn't give up. In 2016, they signed a young Dutch prodigy, Max Verstappen. At just 18, he won his first race with Red Bull at the Spanish Grand Prix. Fans around the world felt a new wave of excitement. Red Bull was back in the hunt. By 2021, after years of fierce battles, Max Verstappen won the World Drivers' Championship, ending Mercedes' long streak. This win was one of the most dramatic in F1 history, decided on the final lap of the final race in Abu Dhabi. And Red Bull was once again at the top of the world. From 2022 onward, Verstappen and Red Bull Racing went on a record-breaking run, dominating race after race. Their cars, designed by Adrian Newey, became engineering masterpieces, and each victory meant more than just points. It meant millions of eyeballs, billions in brand value, and a legacy cemented in sports history. 10. Red Bull, a marketing case study like no other. By the mid-2020s, Red Bull wasn't just a beverage company. It had become a media ompia sports dynasty. A marketing textbook taught in universities, the company sold over 12 billion cans annually in more than 170 countries. Its brand value exceeded $20 billion, and it still had no serious competitor that could replicate its cultural power. Every Formula One podium, every cliff dive, every viral extreme sports clip, every can opened at a party or exam night was another chapter in the story. Dietrich Mateschitz wrote when he bet on an unproven Thai drink decades ago, Red Bull had done the impossible. It didn't just create a product, it created a world. How a can of energy became a global empire. Visual cue. Slow motion shots of Red Bull cans being opened, cut with Formula One cars, skydivers, and packed stadiums in 1987. When Red Bull launched its first can in Austria, no one could have imagined that a sweet, fizzy energy drink would grow into a $20 billion global empire. But this wasn't just luck. It was a masterclass in strategy, storytelling, and vision. This final chapter uncovers how Red Bull makes its money, why its strategy works, and what its future might look like. 1. Red Bull's genius business model at its core. Red Bull's entire empire rests on one simple product, a 250 ml can of energy drink. But the company turned that single product into a multi-dimensional business model. Let's break it down. High margin beverage sales. The cost to produce one can is under 30 cents. It sells for $2 in most countries. That's an insanely high profit margin, especially compared to other beverages. Global distribution. Red Bull doesn't own massive factories everywhere. It focuses on brand building, while outsourcing manufacturing and using efficient logistics networks. This keeps costs low and scales fast. Premium pricing strategy. Unlike Coca-Cola or Pepsi, Red Bull never tried to be cheap. It positioned itself as a premium energy drink, targeting students, professionals, and athletes. Brand-driven demand. Instead of traditional advertising, Red Bull invests in events, sports, and storytelling. People don't just buy a drink, they buy the feeling of energy, freedom, and rebellion. This combination, low production cost, high price, global demand, and strong brand loyalty made Red Bull one of the most profitable beverage companies in history. 2. The power of owning the media. While most companies buy ads, Red Bull became the media. In 2007, they launched Red Bull Media House, a fully independent media company producing documentaries, live extreme sports broadcasts, music content, social media campaigns, original TV formats. Instead of paying millions for ad space, Red Bull creates viral content that people choose to watch. Red Bull YouTube channel equals billions of views, social content equals global reach, in real-time event coverage equals total brand control. Every time someone watches an F1 race, cliff dive, or Stratos jump, Red Bull isn't just the sponsor, Red Bull is the story. This gives them limitless marketing power at a fraction of what big corporations spend. 3. Owning sports teams instead of sponsoring. Here's where Red Bull truly broke the rules. While most brands pay to put their logo on athletes, Red Bull buys or builds the teams themselves. They own Red Bull Racing F1 RB Leipzig, Germany, Red Bull Salzburg, Austria, New York, Red Bulls USA, dozens of smaller clubs and event properties. This means full control of branding. No middleman costs. Long-term investment value, deep emotional connection with fans. These teams also become profitable businesses on their own, generating ticket revenue, sponsorships, merchandising, media rights deals. Red Bull's brand isn't stuck on the sidelines. It's on the field, in the car, in the air, front and center. 4. Culture marketing instead of product marketing. Red Bull doesn't say, buy this drink. Red Bull says, live this lifestyle. They associate themselves with culture, not just caffeine. Extreme sports, nightlife and music festivals, motorsports, adventure travel, youth culture. This is identity marketing. People don't feel like they're buying a product. They feel like they're joining a movement. This is why Red Bull can charge premium prices, keep loyalty strong, expand globally with minimal pushback. They didn't just build a drink, they built a culture. 5. Financial impact. Numbers that shock. As of the early 2020s, sold in 170 plus countries. Over 12 billion cans sold annually. Revenue, $10 plus billion year. Employees, approximately 13,000 worldwide. Estimated brand value, $20 plus billion. But here's the most important number. Red Bull controls over 40% of the global energy drink market. Even giants like Coca-Cola and Pepsi have struggled to match Red Bull's dominance in this space. All this, with basically one core product. 6. Leadership and legacy. Dietrich Mateschitz. It all was one man, Dietrich Mateschitz, the Austrian marketer who took a Thai energy drink and turned it into a global empire. He avoided flashy interviews. He let the brand speak for itself. He reinvested billions into marketing, sports, and content. He built an empire without ever losing the cool factor. When Dietrich passed away in October 2022, tributes poured in from every corner of the world, from Formula One teams, athletes, and fans. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a storyteller, visionary, and cultural architect. 7. Red Bull's future. What comes next even after Dietrich's passing? The Red Bull machine continues to run at full throttle. Expansion into esports, virtual entertainment, and tech. Investment in nutrition science and performance research. Continued F1 dominance through Max Verstappen and their second team Visa, Cash App, RB. Sustainability initiatives to adapt to new consumer values. Red Bull isn't slowing down, it's evolving. And just like Apple or Nike, Red Bull has crossed the line where it's no longer just a product, it's a symbol of energy, ambition, and possibility. 8. The final lesson. The Red Bull Blueprint. Red Bull's journey teaches one unforgettable lesson. You don't need 100 products. You need one powerful idea and the courage to build a world around it. Their formula: start with a simple product, add bold marketing, build global culture, own experiences, not just ads, dominate your niche, then redefine it from a small idea in Thailand to a worldwide empire in sports, media, and culture. Red Bull proved that great brands don't follow the market, they create it. Visual cue montage of Red Bull moments can being opened in slow motion. Felix Baumgartner's jump, Max Verstappen on podium, cheering fans around the world. Closing line, hook outro. For voiceover, this is the story of Red Bull, the brand that gave wings to the world, a single drink that became an empire, a vision that turned into history. Thank you for watching this success story on Next Generation. If this inspired you, hit that like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the next big story is just one idea away.